I got into craft cocktails actually when I was living in Tampa. So I
Oh,
lived across the street from Ciro's.
I
So I was
found my bar.
I was I lived at Harbor House right across the street, so I was able to walk over there on a regular basis. And I think I had my first aviation ever at Ciro's. So you may have made it for me. Who
What
knows?
year? What years did you live there?
From '06 to 16.
I would have. So I moved back here 2013. So
Okay.
if you had gone to Ciro's between 2013 and the end of 2015, I was the bartender there. I mean, I was there
Yeah,
4 nights a week, man.
it's very possible.
I'm sure I made
Very-
you. I love that. I love that.
I hope I tipped well. No, I fell in love with craft cocktails there, and I started this company back in 2009. Sort of the idea of it in 2008 at the economic downturn. So it's funny that we're kind of 11 years later in this, not funny, but in this strange times now. So, and our business is great. Obviously being affected by this a little bit, but we're stable now. So, you know, the focus was wine. The focus was always wine. Wine is what I loved. My whole idea of the company was to produce one brand that was sort of a higher end brand that spoke to a place, that was terroir driven, that was very wine geeky. And then the economic crisis happened in '08, and people stopped drinking 60, 70, $80 bottles of wine. They started drinking $10 bottles of wine. So I developed it really quickly. And that's when I met Jesus Fernandez and his sisters, who owned Dominita Punctum Winery in La Mancha, and we produced the Lobatia brand together back in 2009. So we released it in 2010. We've grown it into one of the top 10 Spanish brands in the US. It was organic before organic was cool. It was, certified before anyone even knew what organic was. And 11 years later, we're kind of reaping the benefits of being one of the sort of first quality value ratio organic brands in the US. So the success of that has allowed us to play in a lot of other avenues and do a lot of other things. So besides Lobatia, we've probably got, 20, 30 other brands that we own between 3 wineries. So the winery where we make this is called Terra Firma Winery, and I own that with Jesus and his sisters. So that's a winery that we co-own together. And the idea of Bruno Marino came about because I was over on the other coast of Florida visiting my parents a few years back, and just as they do, they asked about business and what was going on. And I told them I was thinking about getting into vermouth. And they sort of said, okay, whatever. My parents aren't big cocktail people.
You're
My
like,
dad,
vermouth.
my dad still drinks wine out of a box. But whatever, it is what it is. And my dad said to me, your grandfather used to make his own vermouth. And I said, no way. And I do remember when I was a kid, they're both long dead, but at 4 o'clock every day, they would have this little traveling suitcase, which had a shaker in it, mixer, all this crazy bar stuff. They would bring on a plane, bring in the car, and at 4 o'clock every day, they would make themselves a Manhattan. Apparently, my grandfather didn't like any of the vermouths that were available back then in the stores, so he learned how to make it and made his own vermouth. And I
Wow.
said to my father, excuse my French, but I'm like, you're full of shit. He did not. And about 2 weeks later, I get an email, and it's a handwritten recipe from my grandfather on my mother's side with his vermouth recipe.
Wow.
So that recipe to our winemaker at the time, Bernardo Munoz, and I said, hey, do you think that you can make this vermouth? And he said, yeah, absolutely, I can put it together. So he put together some samples, and we tasted it. We tweaked it a little bit, but we ended up loving it. So Paul Kirsch is not a really great name for vermouth, so we made up the name. That's made up. That's the only part of it that's made up. But the idea of the name is that, people equate vermouth with Italy in general, even though the history may come from Germany, nobody really knows. But Bruno Marino could be Italian, could be Spanish. Both those names are interchangeable in both those languages, both those places. So we're really proud of it. We only made 726 packs in the first batch. What I like about vermouth when I started reading more about it and learning about it is it's really mysterious. Nobody really knows where it comes from. Nobody knows for sure the history of it. There weren't any really rules about it until like the 90s when the EU sort of came in and got together. Italy and Germany came in, and they got together on the rules and said, okay, well, how are we going to define vermouth? So those things sort of propelled vermouth to where it is today, to being more crafty, not just the cheap stuff that you buy and has no flavor, for $3 a bottle in the store.
For sure.
which unfortunately goes into a lot of the drinks that you buy at some bars that aren't necessarily so cocktail driven. So, our goal with this product is to have a vermouth that you can drink straight up, that you will enjoy sipping and on the rocks. Yeah.
I have it right now.
And that's our goal with it, is to have that sort of flavor. But if you go to a bar and order vermouth, it's kind of the height of sophistication. People might look at you and like, what are you ordering? But a savvy bartender will be like, yeah, there you go. Which vermouth do you want?
One of my favorite cocktails. So when I would bartend, especially at Ciro's, I mean, I don't know, a place like that, it's not that you're encouraged to imbibe, but on some level, it's one of those things where you naturally will. Like, you naturally will with guests. You naturally will partake with them. And it's not about doing shots. It's really about making them a cocktail, talking about it. Maybe you're sipping on something, so you're engaging with them. And obviously, we all love to imbibe and we love spirits. That's why you work in an establishment like that. So I used to make myself low ABV vermouth cocktails all the time. I would do like an Adonis or whatever. Or one of my favorites would just be literally 2 different types of vermouth with a lemon twist, maybe something like really bitter, like a Punta Mez. And then before I knew Bruno existed, obviously something like an Antica or something like that. So, it was just a really simple, clean way of imbibing, and I could still do my job. I could still make drinks all night until afterwards we close the bar, and then I'd start drinking whiskey.
Well, you just named 2 of my favorites. I mean, when we were doing comparison, I basically went to the store and bought every single vermouth that you could ever buy.
Yeah.
Punta Mess and Carpano Antico were probably the 2 favorites. There was a couple other ones that I really liked that were much smaller production, very expensive. So we didn't want to be that $40 vermouth. We wanted it to be something that was also very affordable on the shelf for people to say, wow, this is great, and I'm not paying $40 a bottle for it.
Mm-hmm.
Typical retail price on this is $21 to $24.99, which I think is a great value for this this vermouth. But quality-wise, I think it's right up there with the top, the best of the best. And we're, like I said, we're really proud of it. Straight up, I mean, in Spain they have what they call the hour of vermouth, which is around 2 p.m. every day, where you basically just go to the local bar, you order a vermouth, maybe you have 2 of them, and then you go to lunch. So it's just a typical traditional thing in Spain to have the hour of vermouth. There's even a bar in Madrid called the Hour of Vermouth, in Spanish, of course, where people just go. It's open for a couple hours, and you go and you drink, and they've got every vermouth you could ever imagine on the planet. It's magical, and they make cocktails, and people drink it straight up, and it's really, really special.
Because that's so interesting. I didn't know Spain did that, though. I mean, I know this much about vermouth when it comes to the topic, because it's such a big topic. And
like most people.
Yeah, I know about this much. I know, in my head, I was always told that it started in Turin, Italy. I was always told that, Carpano was the first vermouth to actually like make it like to the consumer, and it originally started as medicine. And then, of course, it started taking off as aperitifs. And I think it's really interesting because the first time I tasted vermouth, I was like, oh, yeah, this would make a great martini. This is great in a Manhattan. And a bartender friend of mine, when I was in New York, she was like, oh, I just drink it by itself. And I was like, really? Oh,
yeah.
I don't, huh? And she was telling me that over in Europe, if you order a martini, you have to be very specific about how you order it, because sometimes it will literally just be a glass of vermouth. It won't.
Vermouth.
So that's it. And you're like, oh, okay, I thought I wanted some spirit in there. So it's funny, I now enjoy vermouth just by itself. In fact, I had poured myself a glass of Bruno. It's almost 11:30 in the morning, so I feel like I can start my Spanish happy hour now.
It's past 2 p.m. over there, so you're good. You're good to go.
Exactly. So they're doing this too, I hope.
It's Friday anyway, so we're good.
Yeah, fine.
There's so many different stories about vermouth, and there's no real written history about it. So I would really recommend you grab this book. You can. It's called very simply Vermouth.
Nice.
A guy named Adam Ford. You can get it on Amazon or whatever. And it's a little biased. He's pushing his own vermouth that he makes, but he really digs into some history and anything that was ever written down about vermouth. And it's really, really interesting because there really isn't any. There's no record of where it comes from. Nobody knows where the name vermouth comes from, although speculation says it might come from the German word for wormwood, which is
Wait, vermouth, right? Vermouth.
right,
Yeah.
but nobody knows for sure. So people think that it might have been a German thing. People think it might be Italian thing. Nobody really knows. Cinzano claims that they were the first ones to make vermouth. Carpano disagrees. So there's a long history. And when you talk about the medicinal qualities of it, when Dubonnet was starting to be imported into the U.S. back in, I guess, the 1800s, it was imported as a medicinal sort of item because the taxes were lower than they were on a fortified wine. So after they got caught, basically going out and selling it to bars as a fortified wine, they had to come up with the tax code, and they got the tax raised on them. So Dubonnet is still on the shelf as sort of an aperitif, but in general, it's a vermouth, by rule. So it's a really interesting category. There's a lot of neat twists and turns to it, but nowadays there are some rules. When you're making at least sweet vermouth that you have to follow in the EU and the US, which are usually pretty similar. It's always white wine, so it's always a base of white wine. Ours is high quality organic Vera. Then you macerate it, you add eau de vie, which you fortify it. So we add eau de vie, which is distilled grapes, essentially. You aromatize it, and then you let it macerate. You add all the spices, botanicals, things like that. So we have 30 different spices and botanicals that we use, including juniper, cinnamon, cardamom, quinine, you name it. I mean, there's tons of stuff, licorice, elderflower, 30 different things, and then we macerate it for 9 months. And then at the end of that maceration, you add the caramel color, which gives it its color, it's a little bit of sweetness, and then you bottle it, and that's the process. So it's a long process. The longer you macerate it, the better quality in general you're going to get if the mixture is good. When you taste a cheap one side by side with Bruno or Antica or any of the better quality ones, you'll definitely see the difference. I mean, it's night and day.
When I first had Bruno, I was excited to learn that Johnson Brothers had this in their arsenal. I was like, I haven't seen this before. I don't know about. I'm a craft bartender. Nobody's brought this to me yet. And we got a little bit into obviously how it's related to the winemaker and blah blah blah. I mean, every account I would take it to, any friend I would taste it on, they would always tell me like it's super unique. I mean, just the fact that it's a Spanish vermouth already is already okay. You've got my attention. It's not another Italian vermouth. It's not let me taste it. And then we would always come back to this. It has this fig note to it. It's very fig-like, very date-like. And I love that your bottling says that you think it makes the perfect Negroni, because I have to be honest, I agree. The best Negroni I have ever made was I used Tattersall barrel gin. Yes, but the barrel gin as a Negroni is just phenomenal because it's aged in Chardonnay barrel. And I used Bruno Marino Sweet Vermouth. And then I wanted more of a bitterness, so I did use Campari because I felt like I needed that bitter bite to marry the two. And it was just like phenomenal. It was so good.
Next time, I'm looking forward to you making me one.
Oh, I happily will. Any day, man. Well, I guess not now. Any day later when we're allowed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's interesting. I mean, can you speak at all to like, where do you see this fitting in somebody's bar program? Because like, if I'm a bartender, when am I reaching for Bruno and when am I reaching for other things? Because I'm the type of person where I think you need you need a bunch of different whiskeys, you need a bunch of different vermouths, because vermouths do so many different things in cocktails. And I don't think we talk about that enough. You can't just have one vermouth and think that it's going to make a great drink for any vermouth cocktail out there.
That's a great question. And before we started producing this, I didn't know a lot about vermouth until I drank every single one of them that was ever made. And what I realized is they're all very different. Antica's flavor profile is different than ours. Ours is far more concentrated. Punta Mes, their profile is different than ours even. Theirs is more spicy, more herbaceous. Ours is more cola, more cinnamon, fig, like you said. So I think you have to mix up drinks with it. So where it fits in the bar program, I think, is when a restaurant wants a good quality product that's not going to cost them $35 wholesale. Mm-hmm. I think plus of it. It saves people money. You taste it side by side with some of the competition, and it's just as good, if not better. But they all fit into a certain profile where you can have them all, and they will all make a certain drink better. Is ours the best vermouth to make a Manhattan? Maybe not. I drink it with a Manhattan, but maybe you prefer one of the other brands in your Manhattan because you like that profile better, and that's fine. I love ours straight up. I love ours in a Boulevardier, which I drink way too many of. Negronis, which are fantastic. So I think this is the perfect one for your Negroni, your Boulevardier, and if you're just going to pour it straight up around the rocks, or like in Spain with a little orange peel.
Nice. Would you like to see people drinking more vermouth just by itself in the States?
When we take this out in Manhattan, that's what the somms say. That's what the bar managers say, is that this is the vermouth that could bring vermouth back as that sipping vermouth. They read the back of the bottle too, and they say, yeah, I'm sure it's great in a Negroni, but I don't want to serve it that way. I want to serve this straight up because it's that good. And I agree with them completely. I think, vermouth is low alcohol. You can drink it in the middle of the day. You can have one or two, and you feel good, and you're not trashed. You're not drinking a martini, a typical martini, not an Italian martini. You can go back to work and feel fine when you drink a glass of vermouth. So I like to get into that habit of having a low alcohol cocktail, especially late at night when you've had a big night, had a big dinner. This is a great way in the night, just having a nice vermouth on the rocks.
So you use it as a digestivo and an aperitivo.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think people get kind of stuck in ways where they think, well, this is an Amaro, so I have to drink it after dinner. I can't drink it before dinner. And this is an aperitif, so it has to be drank before dinner. It's like you can kind of drink anything you want at any time of day. You're right, it's your body, it's your decision. But I mean, I very much enjoy low ABV cocktails. I think they're fun. I think they bring out a lot of flavors. For the next video, either the next one or the one after this for the Hospitality at Home series, I'm definitely going to come up with a drink, whether it's the awesome Negroni that I think it's perfect in, but it's really good for me to have this information because now I feel like I can talk so much more eloquently about this product. I love it. I think it's super unique. I think it's at the perfect price point. I don't think it's trying to go after any competition, which is nice. Like I get people that are like, oh, well, are you trying to be like Antica? I was like, no, not at all. I was like, Antica's totally different. Taste them side by side. You're going to completely get two different taste palettes. But I love Antica in Manhattan. I really don't enjoy it in a Negroni. In fact, I'm at a bar, and typically if I order a Negroni, I specifically ask them what vermouth are you going to make it, because I'm a very bitter, boozy, stirred person. So I really like that bitter bite, and that vermouth, it's got to have that too. And I split base it too. Like I'll do like half an ounce of one vermouth and half an ounce of another one because I want that kind of perfect marriage between what I'm looking for.
So many people, when we go out to try to sell this, even bartenders of your caliber, they say, I don't think I've ever had vermouth straight up before.
Yeah.
Or, oh, no, thank you. That look on their face. And they're like, no, try it. And then they go, whoa. So it's still one of those things about educating not just the public, but it's about educating the bar staff that you can serve this straight up. Because me growing up, I've been in the liquor industry since 1994, and I never had a vermouth straight up that I was aware of until probably about 2 years ago. So it was one of those things that was an afterthought, that was a mixer that you pour in a glass and throw away for your white vermouth and your martini.
Yeah, exactly. An in and out, right? An in and out. That's what they call it.
Yeah. So no, I mean, it's about educating, and it's such a lovely product that is so flavorful that I think if you get it to the right people, they fall in love with it for sure.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to me about this amazing product. I really love it. I'm so happy to actually be able to talk to the Tampa market about this bottle and be able to share it with friends. So real quick, so your recommendation, if you're going to have it just by itself, you want it do I keep it cold and chill it, just, serve it right in the glass, or?
I keep it on my bar cart. I throw 3 ice cubes in a rocks glass. I put an orange peel, and I just pour it straight up on there. I love it that way. I love
Perfect.
it. Yeah.
I love that.
You're drinking it too. And I think I'll join you because it is the hour of vermouth somewhere.
Yeah, please do. And actually, I think maybe on an ending note, if you wouldn't mind taking us through the nose, taking us through the taste that you get and the finish, and really giving that nice taste experience to somebody who maybe at home has never really done that before, has never nosed a vermouth and doesn't really know what they're looking for.
Yeah, I mean it's similar to tasting a wine. I mean, you want to identify the color, which it sort of it's reminiscent of a Coca-Cola or a dark rum. It's got that light brown sort of outer ring, and it gets darker in the middle. So you've really got that very pretty caramel sort of color to it. You can always oxidize it by swirling your glass there and bringing out some more of those aromas. And on the nose, I definitely get pine. You get that juniper. You definitely smell citrus. The citrus peel that we add really adds a nice quality to it. The clove, cinnamon. Can't say I know what cardamom smells like, but it's definitely in there.
Yeah, you have to grind cardamom. You gotta grind up and really get it to yeah, you're right. This is
one of the important things to remember is that everything that goes into this is certified organic. So all the spices that we use, all the herbs, botanicals, the wine, the caramel, all of it is certified organic. So we're talking top quality ingredients here. So this, you really get a lot of flavor. Oh man, on the palate, just soft sweetness, beautiful kind of cola, a little bit of spice in the finish. It's lovely. Licorice, nice long finish. 16% alcohol, so it's something you can sip and just really enjoy. Hot day, cold day, whatever you want.
I love your description of cola. I never have described it that way, and you're absolutely right. It's 100% cola, which I guess would be, I mean, what's the key base? If you're talking about cola, what are you really talking about in terms of flavors when you dissect the flavors of cola? Is it cacao nib mixed with
I mean, for me,
sugar?
It's reminiscent of drinking cola growing up. It doesn't taste like that per se. It's different. It's got more spices and stuff, but it's got that cola quality to it.
I love it. And I do like how the viscous of it, the viscosity of it is really, really nice. It's still very balanced, but it's a thick vermouth. It's not thin.
Yeah, I think it's far more concentrated than a lot of the other ones in the market. So what's great for restaurants and on premise is you don't have to use as much of it as you would use with some other brands to get the same quality, the same thing in that drink that you need from some of the other ones. So it's very important in cocktail making, as you know, that balance is there. And I think this is one that's far more concentrated, so you don't have to use a whole lot of it.
Yeah, for me, if I'm making a Manhattan with this, I may not do the 2-to-1 ratio and 2 dashes of Angostura bitters that I would normally do depending on the whiskey I'm using. I always change the ratio. It depends on the whiskey you're using, if it's a rye or bourbon, and then of course, I think how proof and spicy the whiskey is in the Manhattan determines what vermouth you're using and how much of it. So if I was going to use a very high proof spicy rye, which is personally my favorite type of style of Manhattan, then I'm definitely going to maybe instead of an ounce, maybe use 3/4 of an ounce, maybe max. Just take it down a little bit, let the rye shine, just complements it still. And then again, you want to find spirits that go really well with your vermouth, I think is really important. Like I see people make things with Bianco vermouth a lot, and I get it. It's really great. I love a good Bianco vermouth. Don't get me wrong. I personally love Bianco vermouth with just Bianco, some sort of seltzer, and a lemon peel, and that's great. But when you're using it in a stirred cocktail, I've seen people substitute dry vermouth for Bianco, and I'm like, no,
different animal.
Don't do that for me, because it's too sweet. Exactly. Or they're not thinking about making up the difference in terms of, they're not thinking about the gin they're using or the vodka they're using and how all of these things are going to play together at the end of the day in the cocktail. I think that's the difference between, you know, somebody who's a very skilled, meticulous bartender who really has put a lot of thought and time into what they're making you, is they'll make those adjustments for you as a consumer.
Yeah.
So those are the type of bars I really enjoy sitting at and watching them really take control over what they're doing, which I think is what, you know, what I'm missing right now by not being able to do that, for sure.
Absolutely. Well,
So
you got the good setup there. Looks like you can do it on your own.
yes, the Happy Owl Bar. This was a project years ago in my old house. I had a sunroom, and we decided, well, instead of just, you know, having it be a sunroom, let's turn it into a bar room. So I hired a bartender friend of mine who is a very skilled carpenter. That's what he does more than I think he even bartended before. So, and now he's a bar owner, but he built this and he kind of modeled it after the back bar that's at Broken Shaker in Miami, if you've ever been to that one. So,
Sure.
yeah, because it's just a tiny little bar, and I love that bar because it's so small. It is like being in somebody's sunroom, being in somebody's closet. And so we just converted it, and you know, I've always told myself, I've always threatened myself that I should open a speakeasy one day, or I should open an actual bar. But I love it. I think it's really nice piece to have, and when
Yeah, it's great.
when I'm allowed to have parties, this is definitely the focal point where everybody gathers. You know, I always notice that wherever there's a bar, even if you're not a drinker, there's just this thing that happens. It's very communal.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. It's welcoming and warming, and people are there, and they're usually in a good mood, hopefully. So it's
yeah,
you want to be around.
for sure, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. And it's okay if you don't, but do you have like a special toast or anything like that that you do when you're drinking wine or when you're drinking vermouth?
I I really don't. I think you know, it's just important to explore things. There's so many good wines and spirits and different types of things out there that are not made by the big companies, that are made by the small guys that really care and put their heart and soul into it. So, you know, if you're talking to a consumer, I think it's important to tell them that to be adventurous, try something new. You know, there's a lot of good products out there that you're gonna fall in love with if you just give them a shot. So keep an open mind.
I love that. Well, cheers to that, and I think we should cheers to your grandfather. What was his name?
Paul Kirsch.
All right, to Mr. Paul Kirsch, thank you for giving Paul this lovely recipe that he was able to make this beautiful product with. And thank you so much for bringing your grandfather's, you know, history to life in a bottle. That's a really amazing achievement. So congratulations to you. Here,
Yeah, thank you, Bruno.
we're gonna do a clink.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Well, have a great day. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.